Are the Philadelphia Phillies a viable trade partner for Garrett Crochet? Let's discuss on a crossover episode of Locked On Phillies, Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host of Locked On White Sox, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network, and also have covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. I'm with Connor Thomas, a lifelong Phillies fan, producer, and on-air personality at 97.5 The Fanatic in Philadelphia. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox and Locked On Phillies your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox and at Locked On Phillies if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, first, let's actually talk about the key players in a potential Garrett Crochet deal. Then, what are the possible returns? And finally, both sides are going to have to accept in trades. You don't get something for nothing, and you may not get the best stuff in return. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So, Connor, you and I were talking about how could we program the show. We thought about, let's just talk about the key players. So, on Philadelphia, who are the key players that we need to, the key figures that we need to pay attention here?
Yeah, the biggest guy here is Alec Bohm, and this is a really interesting dynamic for Philadelphia because people may look at this report that Alec Bohm is being shopped by the Philadelphia Phillies, and these rumors circulating that Garrett Crochet and the White Sox could be a partner for an Alec Bohm trade. And the response might be, why in the world is this guy available? He's 28 years old. He is still arbitration eligible. He just had a year, or the first half of a year, that landed with him as the all-star starter at third base for the National League team. He had his second straight year of 97 RBIs. He went out and batted .280 in 2024. So people might say the Phillies are World Series contenders. Why would you move this guy? Honestly, the thing with Alec Bohm is he's a very talented player who has shrunk in the moment in the postseason. And he's also a guy that there have been discussions about his attitude when he is slumping. He's a guy that wears his emotions on his sleeve. I think everybody in the world has seen the I blank hate this place comments that he made 2 years ago that went viral around the baseball world. But he's a guy that if you believe that the attitude stuff can be something he grows out of, you're getting an absolute gem that the Phillies, some people don't know why they'd part with him. And even if you do still have concerns about maybe his ability to withstand some of the tougher moments of the baseball season, you're getting a really, really talented young player.
Although I've heard, like when you read around when Bohm and his tie to Crochet, it might be a 3-team trade because, he might be on his way to, say, Seattle or that, because the White Sox view themselves as being so far away from contention that they're even willing to take, like, as the centerpieces, guys at A ball and low A ball. So, and, one of the reasons why they have to trade Garrett Crochet is because their farm system is so depleted of impact bats that they have to find ways to get, impact bats into their farm system. So Bohm, I agree, what you're saying that, he could be a star bat, but the issue is the other reason why they're trading Garrett Crochet is they're not going to extend him. And he's got 2 years left of club control. I don't see them extending Bohm. So that seems like there's two ships passing in the night. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the local guys here in Chicago keeps saying, on that. But it sounds like in terms of the general managers, Dave Dombrowski, what could Sox fans expect? Could he potentially fleece Chris Getz? Are you guys excited to get him on the phone, especially after watching what he got for Eric Fetty and Michael Kopech?
Yeah, the thing with Dave Dombrowski, it's weird. He is known around baseball as the guy who comes in and builds a contender. The guy is a future Hall of Fame executive. If he retired today, he would be a baseball Hall of Famer based on his resume. So he does get the better of a lot of other front office members around baseball from time to time. And he's had his fair share of clunker moves over the past couple years. I mean, I look at what he's done in Philadelphia. Now, these are signings, not trades. But signing Whit Merrifield, who ended up being released midseason, that was the big offseason acquisition for the Philadelphia Phillies.
Can I interrupt you really quick, though? I want to thank him for his service because that was supposed to be the rumored big White Sox potential move last year because the Sox were signing all the former Royals they possibly could because that's where Chris Getz and Pedro Grifol came. So thank you guys for taking that bullet.
Yeah, no worries. That was something. If you guys want Taiwan Walker as part of this deal, you can have him too, because that's another one. And then a trade that the Phillies made at the deadline was Austin Hayes from Baltimore. You gave up relief pitching to do that, and Austin Hayes had a couple injury issues, which is not Dombrowski's fault. But then he was not tendered a contract when you reached that deadline this year. So Dave Dombrowski isn't this wizard that never misses. You can get fair deals out of him. You can get deals where the Philadelphia Phillies end up on the wrong side, especially when you're moving a player the caliber of Bohm because of issues that seem to be more off the field related. Nothing legality, of course, just attitude lies in the clubhouse. So I wouldn't go into this saying, well, Dave Dombrowski is going to fleece the Chicago White Sox. I would more go into this saying Dave Dombrowski is seeing what he can get from a situation he doesn't think is tenable for his team.
All right, well, that makes me a little bit more comfortable because I am just terrified of Chris Getz being on the phone with Andrew Friedman, who Jedi mind tricked him into that terrible deal. Although on the flip side, just to show the Philadelphia Philly fans what you might be dealing with, Chris Getz did hold out until basically spring training for Dylan Cease in that deal. He had a high price for Dylan Cease, and he was going to make sure he was going to get it. The other thing, though, why it took a little bit too, was at the time he was under the mandate of the owner to try to turn things around quickly, which obviously was impossible. And you saw they lost 121 games, but he was having this mandate that he had to get guys that were pretty much close to the big league level. And really teams are not giving a lot of hitters that are close to the big league level at top rated away a lot recently. So he got Drew Thorpe and Jairo Iriarte, and then he got a scratch off ticket. So he at least, when he has his price set, he's going to stick to it. So this trade may not happen even until spring training, but there's a possibility, and it could happen in the winter meetings. In terms of what you guys might get in Garrett Crochet, I mean, I know you had an in-depth episode on that, but just from the Sox perspective, I mean, this is a guy that 73 career innings before he became a starter. I was terrified that they were moving him to the rotation, and he was going to be the opening day starter too after they traded Dylan Cease. I wrote up on SouthsideShowdown.com being like, this is the worst starting rotation I've ever seen. And the one thing that was not the Sox problem this year was actually starting pitching, and it was because of Garrett Crochet. And the other thing is that it's ironic is his injury history actually has altered the franchise trajectory to begin with. If he doesn't get hurt in the 2020 Game 3 wildcard series against the Athletics and doesn't get pulled, maybe Ricky Renteria doesn't get fired, because Ricky Renteria basically pooped his pants after Crochet got hurt. But, you're going to get a guy who's going to be 25 at the start of 2025, and he pitched only in 4 innings after July 1st, still struck out 209 batters, 33 walks, 4.7 F4, 2.69 FIP, and a 3.59 ERA with a 1.07 WHIP. So sounds like that's a guy that you guys would want at the top of your rotation. Am I right?
Yeah, 100%. Now, the one thing that I think about when I look at his stats, and let's be honest, if you're a Philadelphia Phillies fan that likes Locked On Phillies and you're sitting here telling me you watched a lot of White Sox baseball this year, you're lying. Like, it didn't happen for people here. So a lot of Phillies fans are just looking at the box score, and they're seeing Baseball Reference page with that 3-4 plus ERA. And then you look at a guy like Ranger Suarez or a guy like Zach Wheeler, a guy like Christopher Sanchez, and you see lower ERA, and you say, okay, he strikes out a bunch of guys. Can you just talk a little bit about what the season was for him, why he was out after? Just like, is he durable? Is he just a strikeout guy but needs polishing as a 25-year-old professional pitcher? Like, is he as good as he seems from the reports of what trade returns could be?
Oh, he is a stud. I will say that he's a stud. He proved that he was a stud. Why his ERA was a little bit higher. His FIP, actually, if I have it here, his FIP was 2.69. So he was playing behind one of a terrible defense. And that was the thing. The Sox were supposed to upgrade their defense. They brought in Paul DeYoung, part of it for his glove. Well, he hit enough home runs to get up out of town, but he was terrible fielding wise. So he was playing behind that. He's going to throw you, he throws a 4-seamer, a cutter, sweeper, change, and a sinker. On his fastball, it's going to average 97.1 on that 4-seamer, and then he can bring in that cutter and that change at 91.5. The issue that you're going to want to look for is he will sometimes try to throw that sinker down and in on righties. And I don't know if it's an optical illusion. I don't know what it is. I remember watching when he pitched against the Phillies and when he pitched against the Reds at the beginning of the season, it would just hang for just a tick in the zone where a guy could square it up and just crush it a country mile. Yeah. But if he stays away from that, and if he's locating and he's, mixing in the speeds, he's a dominant, deadly pitcher. But if you think about it, why he had to go on this pitch count was In 2022, he missed all of 2022 with Tommy John. Came back late in 2023 and still had some injuries. So this was his first year, not only going into the starting rotation, but his first year where he's basically available all season long. And he answered the bell, but he was on this pitch count where they basically put him on a pitch count after July 1st, and he only did 4 innings. But he had a situation when he was, where did I have it on here? Where in after the Phillies basically roughed him up. I mean, you guys destroyed him, tearing him apart. He went 6 games where he gave up 5 earned runs. I mean, so that he keeps clearing every level that you keep putting at him. So he comes out on opening day. He's absolutely dominant, first couple of starts. Then the adjustment happens and he gets rocked. Then he makes the adjustment and he keeps doing that, left and right. In August, August wasn't good for him. Hitters hit 305 with a 1.020 OPS. Comes back in September, 239, 644 OPS that hitters had in 5 starts. So you're going to get a guy that can obviously mix in speeds, and you got to get to him early. His first inning ERA 4.06, second inning ERA 4.35, third inning ERA 4.13. But it's weird if you look at like how leadoff hitters hit against him. It's like 182. So it's these weird anomalies, just basically being on a bad team. But once he gets to the 4th inning, ERA is 2.84.
So the last thing really quick, and we're going to get into players that could make up the rest of this trade package and who the White Sox could see coming back. The Phillies, surprisingly, actually have their farm system isn't deep, but their top end farm system talent is intriguing for a team that could be looking to pick some guys off. But one thing that we saw recently, the name that comes up to me is Gregory Soto, who we acquired from the Detroit Tigers. And he was an all-star caliber closer there, or at least he seemed like it based on what we saw from his stats. And then he shows up in Philadelphia. And in this market and in these moments and playing in the postseason, he just didn't show up. And the Phillies ended up trading him a year and a half later. So does Crochet seem like the type of guy that would be ready for a moment of a market like Philadelphia, a NLCS potentially if you get there? Like, is he a big game pitcher from just kind of the way he carries himself, you think?
I think he does. I mean, he basically had to be the star and the draw, especially when Luis Robert Jr. Struggled mightily after he got hurt and then came back. He was it on a 121 loss team. He was the guy that everybody went to talk about this historic losing. Pitched well in the All-Star game. He has taken on, he pitched well. As I said, like when he got roughed up, he had a 3-game stretch where he gets just absolutely clobbered, comes back, has a dominant stretch that basically takes him to the All-Star team. And I know pitching in Philly is a totally different animal than pitching on the south side of Chicago, but when you go through something this historic and you're able to produce, that shows you the type of character, because he could have easily checked out. He could even easily made a business decision to say, you know what? I'm not going to demand an extension. Get me up out of here. And one of the things that he did say was, if I'm leaving Chicago, and you want me to pitch beyond my pitch plan, somebody's got to give me an extension, because what if there is an injury and I can't get my earning power? So, that might be not endearing himself to the Philly fans that his camp pulled that. And that's one of the reasons why he was not part of the Phillies to begin with. Because, there was the rumor that he could, the Phillies still made a very solid offer, even though the Sox wanted, I believe it was Painter in return. He wanted an extension. So that might, with the characteristics, but otherwise he's from everything that I've read and heard, he's a great citizen, and he's willing to take the ball, and he wants the ball in the big situations. He threw in 2020. He had the ball. If he just didn't get that injury, he would have. Who knows where the White Sox organization was? And he pitched in 2021 when they made the playoffs.
Gotcha.
So, all right.
Well, you're selling me, but there are a lot of more players that have to be in this deal potentially, especially if you're talking about a third team. So.
Yeah, and let's discuss trade returns next on the crossover edition of Locked On White Sox and Locked On Phillies. So I saw Michael Jordan drop 55 at the old Chicago Stadium, saw LeBron James drop double nickels too. Watched Devin Hester take a punt to the house, and it was amazing. Seeing a game live and in person is always the way to go, especially if you want to see legends play. And the best place to get the best deal on tickets is using the GameTime app. GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. GameTime Picks makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. And I monitor the GameTime app for every Marquette basketball game in case I can convince my wife to go, since I gave up my season tickets to the alma mater years ago. They've had prices as low as $1 for some games. Plus, I get a panoramic view from the seat in the app before I buy, along with the lowest price guarantee, or GameTime will credit me 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today, because what time is it? Game time. And welcome back to a crossover edition of Locked On Phillies, Locked On White Sox. I'm your host of Locked On White Sox, Todd Welter, and I'm here with host of Locked On Phillies, Connor Thomas. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox and at Locked On Phillies if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch a show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox and Locked On Phillies are available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me, and a 30-minute fix of Phillies information with Connor, as baseball is probably way better in Philadelphia compared to what it is on the south side of Chicago right now. And
listen, you wouldn't know it from hearing from the fan base. People are in their feelings over here, and they want this team to change, which is part of the reason we're talking trade today.
Yeah, and also I just want to tell any Phillies fan that's in absolute, in their feelings, try to go through a 121-loss season. I was talking about the Sox threatening to break a Philadelphia record set by the Philadelphia A's in 1916. Okay, that's what I was talking about.
We feel for you, buddy. It's been a long year.
Also, I remember, my backup team's the Brewers, and you guys crushed us in 2000. Crushed them in 2008. So,
yeah, Shane Victorino, never forget.
Yeah, there. And also, you notice I've been flipping back and forth, Locked On Phillies, Locked On A's, who gets top billing. So, making sure that you get your billing too there.
Appreciate it.
Let's look at some potential speculated trade offers. First of all, fan-sided, I know they're more content creation, but Chris Landers, he put this out, the hypothetical swap. Phillies receive Garrett Crochet. The White Sox receive third baseman Alec Bohm, outfielder Justin Crawford, shortstop Starlin Cuba, and right-handed pitcher Taijuan Walker. You think that there's any chance in heck that's happening?
The Taijuan Walker thing's weird because, the Phillies would have to eat a lot of money to get him out of town. I don't know what value he would have to anybody. So I wouldn't expect Taijuan Walker to be in any kind of deal like this. And they're going to put Taijuan Walker in spring training, I think, just to kind of see if he has any semblance of major league pitching. The Justin Crawford thing's interesting because he is one of the Philadelphia Phillies top prospects. Basically, the three big names in the Phillies farm system right now are Andrew Painter, who you brought up earlier, who is a stud righty coming off the Tommy John surgery that's going to be on a pitch limit this year, but probably going to make his major league debut. Aiden Miller, who's their top prospect right now, who seems to be the heir apparent for the future at third base. And that's another reason why the Phillies look comfortable in moving on from Bohm. So Miller's kind of your backup plan in the long term. So he's not going to be available. And then Justin Crawford is the third guy in that three-headed monster. He's really, really good. And we've been hearing about him for years, as this is going to be. The Phillies have had one outfielder make the All-Star game that they brought up through their system, and it was Dominic Brown when he had that weird blip month where he hit like 14 home runs or whatever it was. So for the Phillies to move on from Justin Crawford, that's going to be a guy that is an answer for them in the outfield. They'll have to do something in free agency to be comfortable doing that. That would be a great get for the White Sox, and that would be the guy that would be the cornerstone of the minor league part of that trade. Starlin Caba is their fourth overall prospect, so you're probably not getting both those guys. I'd say it'll be Justin Crawford and then maybe a lower level guy that you look at in the infield. There's two guys that you want to keep an eye on that are a little bit lower down. Rincon and Rincones. It gets a little complicated there, but Brian Rincon and Gabriel Rincones are always in these like mock trade talks because they're right in the middle of the prospect list here when you look at the top names. One's their 10th overall, one's their 11th overall, one plays outfield, one plays shortstop. So you can look at those guys to supplement a Justin Crawford led trade. But I don't think you're getting Crawford and Caba in the same deal.
All right. So Elijah Evans of Just Baseball, I've had him on the show for Locked On White Sox. He's got Eduardo Tate, Caba, Rincones Jr., and Michael Mercado.
Yeah, Eduardo Tate is an interesting name because the Philadelphia Phillies may be a little bit hesitant to move him due to the Logan O'Hoppe trade that they made for Brandon Marsh. Now, they went out and acquired Brandon Marsh 2 years ago at the trade deadline. he comes in here in 2022. And Logan O'Hoppe gets moved because JT Realmuto, the Phillies starting catcher, has him handcuffed at the position. And then Logan O'Hoppe looks pretty darn good in Los Angeles for the Angels, and JT Realmuto ages quickly. So Eduardo Tate is still, like, his projected time to come to the majors is 2028, which is why the Philadelphia Phillies may feel comfortable in moving their 5th overall prospect at a position it seems like they have a long-term need in the coming years. Outstanding player, just don't know if he's close enough for this Phillies team. So that's a spot where the White Sox could get a winner of a player that is not going to be up in this like immediate contention window for the Phillies, where Dave Dombrowski gets a little bit hasty and says, hey, I got to move this guy. So if you're getting Eduardo Tate in this deal, along with, what were some of the other names in that trade again? Sorry. I got caught up.
We had Caba and Rincones Jr.
Yeah, Caba, your best infield prospect outside of Aiden Miller. I mean, that would be an absolute win for the White Sox. And that's more possible because of the time. Caba's a 2027 projected arrival at the major league level. Like we were saying, Tate 2028. So those are some guys that you could get because Dave Dombrowski is a contender builder and not so much a prospect keeper.
Yeah, and the White Sox, again, are, in terms of the timeline, they've already, it's been speculated, I think it was Ken Rosenthal who put that out, that they're not, they don't need a guy that's going to be, on the roster tomorrow. They're looking for, whoever they can get in terms of talent that can be an impact bat. So here's mine. All right, bear with me. All right. Just now, after speaking with you, I'm going to throw out 5 players. I don't need 5, maybe 4. My goal is for the White Sox, and I've said this on past shows, is I do want at least 4. I want definitely maybe 2 of the top 10. I can maybe settle, but I want high impact bats with high ceilings. So I'll either take Justin Crawford or Starlin Caba, because obviously I know top prospect Miller. I'm throwing him off the board because teams are no longer trading their top prospect anymore. They're just not. The last one was Luis Castillo for Novalli Marte, and that's because he was at single A. Once it gets to double A, it just seems like teams are like, nope, they're close, hitting his heart. So Crawford and Caba. I'll take Rincones Jr. as one of my guys, and either Emerin Boyd, because I like reading about his speed, or outfielder Raylan Herrera. And again, I only read up on the MLB top 30, quick clips on this. I'm not expecting that, but when I looked in their numbers, they looked like pretty good scratch off prospects to me. So I don't know. Does that get that job? Does that get a deal done?
Yeah, listen, when I hear you say that, I would be very comfortable. I think the Phillies, like if I'm playing Dave Dombrowski right here and you picked up the phone, you said, this is what we want to do. Starlin Caba can go, Eduardo Tate can go. Maybe not in the same deal, but I look at those 2 guys and I say, okay, if you're getting a 25-year-old that's got 2 more years of team control and Garrett Crochet that can help you win now, that has this plus strikeout ability, those would be 2 guys that I may be comfortable with parting for. Now, those are your 4th and 5th prospects. So for a team to give up an all-star starter at the major league level, if Bohm goes to Chicago, now if there's a 3rd team in the deal, that's totally different, and the Phillies can get prospects back that might be able to even this out. But you wouldn't get Bohm and then those 2 guys. So White Sox fans' expectation would be that your return would be these prospects, and then there could be a 3rd team involved. If it's Bohm going to Chicago, you probably get one of Caba or Tate. And then the guy you brought up that's really interesting, when you look at a Marion Boyd, like he's a guy that is about major league ready now. His projection is that next year, not 2025 to 2026, is his projected arrival. And that's just because he's a guy that is unbelievably athletic, that's shown some tools of like a comfortable hitter at the major league level, but can fly. So if he can find on base, think of him as sort of a Johan Rojas that we don't know whether or not he can hit yet. Whereas Johan Rojas, if you know anything about his time with the Phillies, we know he can field at a platinum glove level, but he can't really hit major league pitching. And you could still believe that Marion Boyd might develop a little bit more than that. So let's do Caba. Let's do Marion Boyd. And if you're looking at a situation where the White Sox are just getting prospects back and Bohm is going somewhere else, you could potentially get Eduardo Tate in that deal as well. That would be 2 top 5 prospects and another guy that you'd be receiving back for Garrett Crochet, which I think is a haul, but fair considering the age and the ability.
Yeah, I just want a 2-player markup just because if I'm looking back at different like levels of players. First of all, again, I know he doesn't have the Cy Young or a lot of the All-Star appearances, but he does have at least one All-Star. I think he's a legit ace. Luis Castillo, again, he went for 4 prospects. Now, obviously, he went for, he had longer production, but I would just say at least the market says 4 prospects. So I'd even settle for another lottery ticket than if we're pretending to be manager here. And then also when it comes to, your 4th or 5th, I mean, Corbin Burns, granted, he had the Cy Young and he only had 1 year of control. He goes for Joey Ortiz and DL Hall, and they were top 100 prospects, and they were in the top 5 of the Baltimore Orioles. So I think that's a fair type of thing. And now I know there's going to be folks that are going to be listening to this and be like, well, you got to get Andrew Painter. You got to get this. Well, you know what? Connor and I, after the break, are going to give you the PSA of you're not going to get those types of guys anymore. We'll talk about that after the break next on a crossover edition of Locked On White Sox, Locked On Phillies. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I always maintain FanDuel spreads, over-under, and money lines are fun to play. But if you want to win big or at least double your money, FanDuel's parlays, props, and futures is the way to go. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter, and again, this is a crossover edition with Locked On Phillies. I'm here with Connor Thomas, and I didn't mean to have my big board on there with Todd Welter to overshadow you there. I realized I'm like, man, I got my label up here.
All good.
Yeah, but again, shout out to all our everydayers. We appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans and Phillies fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or at Locked On Phillies. I know I subscribe to actually Locked On Phillies. I catch the show every now and again because I sometimes want to hear what good baseball is like, and I do enjoy hearing Phillies fans in their feelings. It really does. Like after they lose in a playoff game, and I get it. It's got to be heartbreaking because, you've had a couple, playoff appearances there, and it's like just so close. And then, nobody takes the pain like Philadelphia fans. I mean, you guys have it the corner market on acting like, a loss is like, good Lord, it's the end of the world again.
If you flipped some of the commentary about the Philadelphia Phillies with the Chicago White Sox right now, it would fit. And that is insane for a team that won 95 games and a division title for the first time in 13 years and has gone to the World Series 2 years ago and the NLC. And here's the thing, though. This is where it becomes advantageous for teams like the White Sox because Dave Dombrowski feels that pressure. And he knows that he needs to make changes to try and win a championship for Philadelphia. And that leads to decisions like trying to trade Alec Bohm, who, again, 28-year-old all-star starter, arbitration-eligible player still. Getting a guy like that can change a franchise, or getting prospects that you're looking to move to contend can change a franchise, like if you're in the Chicago White Sox space where you need to rebuild that farm system. And Dave Dombrowski can be had on deals like this because of pressure from the fan base. Now, what can't happen is the pressure from the fan base can't be give us your top prospect for nothing.
Yeah. I mean, that's why, again, I'm being realistic. Some of the, everydayers here and are probably like, no way. Also to the Philadelphia Phillies everydayers on your side, just to say, though, the other reason why Alec Bohm might not be in play for the White Sox is they still view Miguel Vargas. I don't know why they view Miguel Vargas, the guy that got back. He was the crown jewel in the Fetty Kopech 3-team trade. They still view him as a third baseman, and I think they maybe want to give him some runway. Plus, they have like 3 impact bats that I could say for sure, like these guys project that could be studs. And one of them is Brian Ramos. He briefly came up this year, got a little runway. They're going to give him some more runway. He's placed third. So they may have to move him to first. So they're kind of covered when it comes to young. But again, the White Sox are so bad. Maybe they do need maybe they do say, we'll take Bohm just because we need something better in our lineup because they have so much pitching depth. But when it comes to these trades, and especially trade contents, you and I, we're content creators in a lot of ways. What drives me nuts is the reaction of each fan base. It drives me insane because on one end, I'll put it together something maybe on Southside Showdown. Phillies fans will get in and be like, oh, I'm not paying that price. It's like, you're not going to get a top player for basically a broken down seat. And on the flip side, it's the fan base. Then when the trade happens, like, we didn't get enough. It's like, look, to get something good, you have to get something good. And you also have to operate in the reality that none of us are GMs. We're just taking guesses. One of the reasons why I like doing content is it allows me to learn about potential players. I don't know if you got the same PSA or not.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. Like, people use so much hindsight when it comes to trades. They look at the way things end up to determine who won or lost the trade. And at the time, you go off what you have in the moment. So is Dave Dombrowski moving Andrew Painter, who is a potential one in a rotation at some point in the future that you have locked down if you don't have to? Is he moving a guy like Aiden Miller, who's going to be the long-term response at this position to moving on from Alec Bohm? Like, you just have to try and be realistic. And so many people see these mock-ups of trades and don't really consider, well, why would the team do that? I see Milwaukee Bucks stuff behind you. The NBA trade machine, I think, was where this started on ESPN's website, where any fan could put together anything and find out if the money works. They didn't really tell you if the trade would actually go through. This isn't MLB The Show. And you need to have a little bit of understanding that everybody wants their slice of the pie. There is give and take in this. And ultimately, there's going to be both sides that look at this and say, well, I wish we would have gotten more. That's just the reality of trading in Major League Baseball, especially when prospects are involved and there's so many what ifs.
Yeah, and especially now, like, again, yes, the White Sox got Yohan Moncada at the time, who was the number one prospect for Boston when Dave Dombrowski was in Boston for Chris Sale. But there's a difference. Chris Sale was also under a team-friendly deal, and there was a different economic model. I mean, now that hitting salaries have even now basically tripled since 2016, and now that hitting has become even harder 8 years ago, teams are realizing now more and more, if I have a top fielding prospect and he gets to AA, why am I going to get rid of that guy? Because number one, he's going to come cheap if he gets to the majors. And number two, hitting's become so hard that even if a guy can show that he can hit amongst his peers at AA, there's a chance he can hit at AAA, and there's a chance he can hit at the big leagues. Like, it's really tough now to get these types of guys unless they're at single A, like when, again, the Mariners said, okay, we'll give up Novalli Marte because he could bust at the next level.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's 100% the case. So take the prospect moves with a grain of salt. Always expect, like, the way that I look at trades is always to expect if you think you're getting a top 5 prospect, you're probably getting a top 10 prospect. If you think you're getting top 10, you're probably getting someone in the top, like, 12 to 15. And just normally, because fans always over-expect the return because you want your team to be better. And that's the same thing for the Phillies side. If you think you're going to give up nothing and get Garrett Crochet, you're probably going to have to give up more than you think. So just always err on the side that you're probably giving up more because you have to see it from the other team's perspective. And no, Andrew Painter's not moving, and no, Garrett Crochet is not coming here for nothing. So I think we could settle that for the time being.
Yeah, and then the final PSA that I got to give too is we don't know what each team scouts thinks. We don't know what numbers, because the White Sox are now getting into the actual age of when you look at numbers and data and analytics. We don't know what they're valuing. They, a lot of teams are not going to be like, well, I value this, this, and this. A lot of it is they trickle out the nuggets through the National Baseball Insiders or just general vague statements. So we don't know if they think, maybe they don't think Miller is very highly of them. Maybe they do look at Kaba more as the guy that could be there because they see something that might be better than Miller. So we don't know. We also don't know, what do they have the notes on them in international free agency? What were the notes that they had them on at the draft? So there's so many things that go into these trades that it drives me nuts. Like when I do these types of shows, or when I do and again, anybody can be in their feelings. I'm not telling you how to fan. It's just before you hit send to vent, just take a deep breath and realize there's so many factors that go into these things.
Yeah, certainly are. Man, there are a lot of factors that went into today's episode, but this was a lot of fun checking in with you. And we could see this deal done as early as next week with the winter meeting starting on Monday, and that really gets things moving. So maybe the White Sox, the Phillies, they're a match for one of the big trades of the offseason.
And if that happens, we'll probably do another crossover edition, that type of stuff. So yeah, my prediction is either it's going to happen at the winter meetings or it's going to happen between, it's probably going to drag out into spring training. Well, that wraps up this edition of a crossover edition of Locked On Phillies and Locked On White Sox. And thank you for making Locked On White Sox and Locked On Phillies your first listen today. And for your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you're listening to your podcast. I'll be back on Monday with what to expect the Sox to do at the winter meetings. Plus, if it's realistic, the Cubs trade Garrett Crochet to the Cubs. Maybe that might happen. I'm going to have CubbiesCribs.com, Jake Meisner. And then Garrett, Connor, what do you got going on for Monday?
Yeah, we're running through some of the big-time free agents that are going to be available. One of the positions we're looking at is third base, so we're going to see who else is out there. And the Phillies kind of need to add some pitching. Is Jack Flaherty potentially a guy that they go out and look at? After a bit of a down year, could he be a steal for the Philadelphia Phillies to go acquire? A lot of things happening in both cities here to keep an eye on.
Yeah. And if you're a Sox fan, you can leave comments about today's episode at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dubber, at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. If you're a Phillies fan, Connor, where can folks leave messages?
Yeah, go ahead and check me out on Twitter at ConnorThomas975. That's my personal, but also at LO_Phillies on Twitter. And make sure you keep locked into the Locked On Phillies YouTube. Hit that subscribe button for us and for Locked On White Sox, of course.
All right. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. We will talk to you Monday.